Okay, hopefully that stays together because I walk and move things a lot. Hi, thank you for that wonderful welcome. This place is gorgeous, and I'm so glad all of you came out to hear me talk about one of my favorite things, ōpae'ula. But before I talk about the actual shrimp, I'm going to talk a little bit about their ecosystem. Has anybody heard of anchialine ecosystems? Yeah? Okay, good. Great crowd. So if I get too nerdy on it, please excuse it. If I get too redundant, please excuse it, because it looks like we have tons of experts here. So this is just a map of the of the world. Every single red star has been identified as having anchialine ecosystems. And we're here in the middle of the Pacific with our own little red star. And that is because Hawaii actually has documented and described over 600 different anchialine ecosystems, which is over half of the world's anchialine ecosystems. Yeah, where Hawaii Island, the island we're on, has more than half of Hawaii's populations, and Kona has the majority of it. So the majority of the majority is here on this coastline. So I like to call Hawaiian anchialine ecosystems loko wai'pae, where loko means pond, lake, or pool. Wai is water or any liquid that isn't seawater. And ōpae just means shrimp. So loko wai'pae is just a shrimp pond.
Wait, can we say together?
Loko wai'pae. Oh, we say it together. Oh, I love that. Typically, loko wai'pae look similar to this little schematic here, where they're 100% fed by groundwater. What that means is that there are no surface connections to any bodies of water. It doesn't connect to any streams. There's no connection on the surface to the ocean, but it is brackish water. So all of the water it gets is from the ground. And because of that, you'll usually find these places along the coastlines. And they are tidally influenced because they are on the coast and they are influenced by the seawater. But some are way more tidally influenced than others. And they sometimes, like a really good one would look similar to this, where the waters are clear. You can see some native seagrasses, vegetation around, maybe some native damsel or dragonflies. It's home to our native shorebirds. There might be some fishes that have gotten in with a high tide. You'll definitely see ōpae'ula, maybe some sea snails. And it's a perfect breeding ground for phytoplankton because of that, that mixture of the sea and the freshwater. These are a few photos of kind of the types that we have here in Hawaii. So we have 4-ish types of loko wai'pae or anchialine ecosystems. The first two, I wish I had a pointer. Do I have a pointer? I don't. These first two here at the top are karst caves on Oahu. You have the karst cave and then you have a karst surface pool. So karst is limestone. So when the sea level was a lot higher, corals were able to grow higher up on our lands. And then when the sea level sank or decreased, those coral skeletons died and they left, or the corals died and they left their coral skeletons behind. And that is what made up these karst ecosystems. So if we think of like a coral reef ecosystem, we know that they're very like intricate. They have all these caves, they have all these cracks and fissures, and it was a perfect ecosystem to contain water. So you'll usually see karst on older islands like Oahu because of that sea level rise and sink. Whereas on this island and the younger islands like Maui, you'll get volcanic caves and volcanic surface pools. So this is a cave on Maui, and that's obviously here, down at QLT. And this is formed from lava tubes usually, and cracks and fissures in a lava field. Oh, and these ecosystems are very diverse. So this first example I have here are sizes. So they can range from like 1 to 2 meters all the way up to hectares big, maybe even bigger. I think this one is 3 or 4 hectares, which is like 7-ish acres. And this, you can see our feet. This is like a foot here, and it's maybe a couple of feet big. You can also have like single pond ecosystems or complexes. So like here is a photo of a single pond, and then here we have ponds that are very close to each other that during high tides, they'll connect and be one big pond. And then we have different types of substrates. So the photo on the left here, you can see the substrate is sandy at the bottom. I'm sure we recognize where this one might be. Yeah, lots of people go swimming in this one. Where the one in the middle is like a rocky, pebbly pond bottom. And then the one on the far right is silty and muddy substrate. And then the depth can range dramatically. I know it's hard to tell in this photo or these photos, but the photo on the left, at high tide, it's like ankle deep, if that. The photo on the right isn't even my deepest pond that I've seen, but this one gets to maybe my neck, and it's like five-ish feet. But there are ponds that I have to snorkel in to do my surveys with like a dive light, because it's the light just doesn't penetrate. It's so deep. So very, very diverse. And they are, I said this already, but they are tidally influenced, and some of them are extremely tidally influenced. These are 2 photos side by side of the same pond on the same day, hours difference. So I think this one's like 9 a.m. and that one was maybe 3 p.m. So not that much difference, but it totally emptied out. And this is, of course, during an extreme tide, but extreme tides happen all the time, all throughout the year, even several times a month it happens. So very, very cool. And because of that, there are a ton of different uses for these ponds. I'm just going to name a few with my cute little photo gifs in there. So the fresher ones were often used for bathing pools traditionally, or drinking water. Whereas the saltier ones could have been used to contain certain types of seafood, so that they could, for later consumption, it's kind of like a refrigerator. So this particular one has been noted as a pond used to house honu, and other ponds could house fish, so they could catch them later and it'd just be easier. Oh, and also because it's so diverse, so dynamic, there are a bunch of different organisms that live off of these habitats. For instance, these coastal plants, I know the pictures are small, sorry, but we have pohuehue, kulikuli, and rupia, just to name a few. We also have habitats for all these different native shorebirds and seabirds. And also tons of different lepo. So lepo I use very loosely. It means mud. It could also mean thick algae mats. It could mean microbial mats. But this is a great ecosystem for all of these because of that salt and fresh water and that sun. When the tides empty out, the sun warms up that lepo and allows for the microbes to blossom, and also for the phytoplankton to grow. And of course, it is home to a ton of different invertebrate species. So I already mentioned a few of them, but today we're going to focus on these crustaceans down here, in particular the shrimp. So what are ōpae'ula? A lot of people think of this one shrimp species when we talk about ōpae'ula. This guy, scientific name is Halocaridina rubra. He is typically the one that you will find at a pet shop if you have them in like ecospheres. This is typically the one. But in reality, ōpae just means shrimp. Ula just means red. So ōpae'ula just means red shrimp. So I use ōpae'ula to refer to all of the red shrimp that live in these ecosystems, kind of like a blanket term. And this is where it gets nerdy. I promised some nerdy slides. So this is kind of like a tree of life I made for all the ōpae'ula shrimp species, or all the ōpae'ula that have been described in Hawaii's ponds ever, except for one. In a paper in 1978, there was one ōpae'ula that was described and was never described again, has never been found ever again in any paper. So that guy's not on here, but there are 9 listed. And we can just start at the beginning. So they're in the domain Eukaryota, like us, kingdom Animalia, like us, phylum Arthropoda, like a bunch of insects, class Malacostrata, and then the order is Decapoda. Does that sound familiar to people? That's the one that crabs and shrimps, lobsters are all in. And then they break off, our ōpae'ula, break off into 2 suborders, the Procarididia and then Caridia. So the pros only have 2 species in them, and the difference between the pros and the Caridia are just, the pros have more setae, which is more hairs on their bodies, and don't have true claws. So they only have walking legs. They don't have their claws. Whereas Caridia are considered the true shrimp. So we have 4 different families in this that the ōpae'ula species fall under. I'm going to try to say it. It's a lot of Latin, but I'm going to try to say it. Barburidae, Palaemonidae, Alphiidae, and Aetiidae. And a lot of them are endemic. A lot of them are endangered. But the ones I want to focus on are these bottom 3, 4-ish, because those are the most abundant ōpae'ula species that we have. So they're in the families Alphiidae and Aetiidae. Alphiidae only has 1, and that one I think everybody kind of knows this guy, the Metabateus lohena. This is the one, he's like twice the size of the Halocaridina rubra. I say twice the size, but he's like this big. And he swims around like a bulldozer, like he just has his 2 claws out just swimming around. I think I have a video, you can see it later. And then Aetiidae has 2, 3-ish, depending on this one guy down here, the Polahemo. I don't have a photo of him, but there is this is a hot topic right now, it's current debate on whether or not it is a separate species because it has only been found in 1 pond. So scientists are debating whether or not we should make it a separate species, but I figured I'll give him the limelight since I gave everybody else the limelight, and I just kept him as a separate species. But he's actually, most likely is that population in that pond has been separated from the rest of the Halocaridina rubra's population for too long. So they are starting to look like they might be a different species, but they're probably the same. And then we have Anticaridina loensis. The easiest way to tell the Anticaridina apart from the Halocaridina are the eyes. Anticaridina have white eyes, Halocaridina have black eyes. They're about the same size. They kind of look the same. So you got to get really, really close and just stare at their eyes. Just like look lovingly into their eyes to tell the difference between them. But Halocaridina by far, Halocaridina rubra are the most abundant. And then probably followed by Metabateus and then Anticaridina. And then the rest of the guys are just a few ponds. But the really cool thing about the Aetiidae family is that their ancestors are fully freshwater. Whereas the rest of the families of all the other ōpae'ula they have marine ancestors. Aetiidae are all freshwater ancestors as adults. As larvae, they can survive in salt water. They can tolerate it a little. As juveniles, they can tolerate it even less, but as adults, it's just fresh water, except for the few that are in this clade called the anchialine clade, which is where Anticaridina and Halocaridina fall within. So it is likely that they were just really special and they got here through the salt water because they came from that clade. But yeah, every other ōpae'ula species has a marine ancestor except for those guys. So they're really, really cool. More nerd stuff, but so ōpae'ula, specifically the Halocaridina rubras, are both osmoregulators and osmoconformers. What that means is that they can regulate their body, the functions of their bodies on their own, or they can just conform to whatever the salinity is. If it's saltier, they tend to be osmoconformers. If it's fresher, that's when they become osmoregulators. And the way they do this is they have these mitochondrial-rich cells on their gills that help pull in the salt into their bodies. So that's how they've adapted to live in saltier waters and not just full fresh water. But as eggs and larvae, they cannot do that. Did I skip one? Oh, there. Okay, it was on that one. So the eggs and larvae do not have those mitochondrial rich cells developed yet, so they need the salt water. So typically in the wild, you will not see a buried female. It is likely the buried female is underground, where like just below that freshwater lens, where it's salty, and that's probably for two reasons. The main reason is to help her larvae, help her eggs develop, but also carrying these eggs it uses a lot of energy, and osmoregulating uses a lot of energy. So in saltier waters, she can just osmoconform and not have to use up that energy. And all of that can just go to her eggs. And usually when you're underground, there's not much food. So the less energy you use, the better. So they're osmoconformers when they're underground. This is a video of some metabateas that are buried. They're the ones swimming like this. And you can see, maybe you can see with the glare, there's some that have like black right on their tails, and that's the eggs. So metabateas might be, so this is in the wild, we just scoop them up. We were trying to bait them, we scooped them up, and they are out and about. So I'm assuming metabatea, I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming metabateas larvae are slightly different than Halocaridina. They develop differently maybe. And that is likely because they have marine ancestors, whereas the Halocaridina only had freshwater ancestors. So they are better adapted for the salt water. So I just said a bunch of cool stuff about ōpae'ula, but if you're not convinced how cool they are yet, I can tell you more. So not only are they super cool, but they're also the main grazers of loko wai'pae. So they're in charge of keeping the waters clear. They graze on the algae mats, the microbial mats, the phytoplankton. They do a lot of work, and usually when you see these ponds and they don't look very clear, it's probably because they're not in there and there's probably somebody else in there. Also known traditionally to be used as a superior palu to catch fish like ōpelu. Or bait to catch ōpelu, but more than just a superior palu, they're also used in this practice called hanai, where you would go out and feed these populations, get them fat and momona, and then don't catch them, and then come back, feed them again, kind of like training them to know you, to know your boat, to know the area to go, so that when you do want to catch them, you have a huge fat population and they come straight to you. You don't have to work hard. Yeah. So they were used in that practice. In North Kona, I should differentiate. And that is also important because fat momona populations of these smaller fish, like ōpelu, means that there's more food for our bigger fish like aku and ahi, and they come in and they grind too. So it makes it a little bit easier for someone to catch all of these types of fish. So with that said, I have been studying in some way ōpae'ula and loko wai'pae since 2017. Not this intensely, but I have been studying them in some aspect since 2017. So I kind of want to show you their underworld life. I know it's not the greatest video because it's so skinny, but this was taken with my iPhone, obviously. But you can see in here that they have like a little city. They're hanging out with these snails. They're eating the algae on the rocks. They're hopping from neighbor to neighbor. Kind of looks like they're socializing. They're just chilling in the sun. The beautiful clear waters. They're doing their job. And there's tons of them all over this. It's kind of like that bright red against that green is like Christmassy. So good vibes in the water. But all of this, staring at these for years and years, I have way more questions than answers. And some of the questions I had revolved around how their populations, how their abundances change during different natural cycles, like the moon cycle, the tidal cycle, and like day versus night. So I went and I asked, or I hypothesized that during higher tides, the abundances would decrease. That's because it might be saltier, or it might just be funky. So I thought higher tides, weird. And as the moon shifts into fuller phases, I hypothesized abundance might go up. And that was because I thought a lot of aquatic species, especially marine species, they mate or they spawn around fuller moons or maybe even new moons. So I thought maybe they're coming out in like droves because they're going to be mating. And then also, I thought at night their abundances might increase simply because they're red, and red is kind of invisible in the dark. So I thought maybe they come out because it's safer at night. I did a bunch of research, did a bunch of sampling. Don't want to walk you through that. But basically, I found that tidal periods have no significant effect. Moon phases also have no significant effect, but I want to guess this, so I'm going to continue this work. But day versus night does have an effect. I have a few graphs here. There's lots of jargon here, but the ponds here in the blue square, I'm calling them northern ponds. In this red square, my southern ponds, and the middle square are just middle ponds, or the green square are my middle ponds. These are box plots, and the black plots are at nighttime. It's the abundance at night. And the yellow bars are abundance during the day. And basically, you can see there is a significant difference between day and night, especially if you look at the north and the south. At night, the abundance is significantly higher than during the day. However, what I thought was even cooler was that the middle ponds seem to be the opposite. It is still significantly different, but in the opposite way, where their abundance is higher during the day than at night. So I had to think why. And it's a very simple answer. I'm sure some of you know. Do you want to take a guess? I'm sure some of you know. Because why? Temperature?
What, the sand?
Predators, yes. So unfortunately, years ago, very invasive predators such as tilapia fish, or mosquito fish, tilapia, and guppies were introduced to these ecosystems. The northern ponds all have these introduced species. The southern ponds, same, and the middle ponds do not. So it is likely that their natural behavior is to go back underground at night. But because of the predators are sleeping at night, so they have drastically changed their behaviors, and they now come out in abundance at night instead of during the day, which is unfortunate because if you think about what they're eating things that are going to be very oxygen rich during the day. Like they're eating algae, right? Algae is getting all this energy from the sun during the day. So at night, maybe if they come out a little early, they'll still catch that. But it is very different. So I think their food is also changing. Oh, and okay, I forgot to put this in here. But these are plots of the way that I did my sampling. So typically scientists, when they're studying these ecosystems, they'll go out and they'll get like a snapshot measurement of what is happening at the time that they're there. When I was doing mine, I went out at different tidal cycles, so 4 times a day, for a period between 2 and 3 days. And I did it multiple times throughout the year. And then I would average it each time I went out. Same thing like this, I would do it multiple times a year. But you can kind of see, if you can see, that especially for the northern ponds, where there's a lot of predators, and somewhat in the southern ponds, these reds, where there are a lot of predators, the abundances are not accurate if you're just going out for a snapshot, because usually we want to go out when it's easiest for us and not the best time for the animal. So we're going out during the day, and we just saw that a lot of these with the predators are not out during the day. So we're missing those populations, and we're assuming that they're struggling, but in reality, they're not doing that bad. There are hundreds of them in ponds that I thought had almost none. But we just weren't out there at the right time. So I encourage anybody that is wanting to do this kind of work, where there's organisms that live underground and come out during the different times of day, to do it throughout the day, especially if you're looking at ōpae'ula. This is another video. Sorry, again, it's an iPhone video of one of those ponds that I have to snorkel in. It's a very deep pond. And they're doing something really, really weird. It's hard to see, but that big red blob in the middle are thousands of ōpae'ula just hanging out in the middle. They're not at the bottom. There's like a couple feet left to go before you get to the bottom. They're not at the surface. They're still a couple feet from the surface, and they're all just hanging out in the middle. They're very, very active. They're like swimming in circles. I have no idea what they're doing. Maybe they're eating, but I really don't know. And this is not the only pond that I've seen this happen in, where there's thousands and thousands of ōpae just hanging out in the middle. And I like to call it like a ōpae highway, because this one you can't really see it. They're just like chilling, but usually they're like on this highway. They're just going vroom, 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 and then they'll jump off the highway and they'll like sit on a rock for a bit and then jump back on the highway. This one is very different. So that was another question I had, is what are they doing? Why are they clustering? And this is what I'm currently looking at, is why they're exhibiting these weird clustering behaviors. And I'm doing more than just sitting there and staring at them for hours on end, although I am doing that as well. I'm also taking these biofilm swabs to see if maybe they're having, like, there's a food preference or something. So I look for clusters. I take swabs in the middle of these clusters. I also look for areas that they are in, grazing, hanging out, take swabs in that area, and also areas that they're not in. And I take swabs of those areas. And that is, again, to identify maybe if there's like microbial assemblages or algae assemblages that are preferred, and that's why they're clustering. But it could also be they're clustering because they're having this social interaction. They're clustering because maybe it's mating season and they all are getting to know each other. Maybe there's predators nearby and they're clustering for protection. So a lot of my work is just sitting there and watching, but also is analyzing these microbials and biofilm swabs. I have no data on that yet. But I kind of wanted to transition into something else that I am working on. Bridget mentioned that I am also an urchin researcher, and that is, I'm focusing a lot on genetics for urchins, but also on like how we can get back the ono for these organisms, the want to eat, the want to care for, so that we can eat these organisms. And I love our coastlines and our intertidal zones where all of these organisms live. And urchins also exhibit these really interesting clustering behaviors. So it aligns with what I'm already doing. So I mentioned a little bit about the intertidal zone. This is where the particular urchin that I study lives. It's rocky intertidal, heavy wave-swept intertidal areas. They're called hau'ukeuke. Is anybody familiar with hau'ukeuke? Also known as shingle urchins, helmet urchins. Has anybody eaten them? Yeah, a few. 1, 2. This is a closer view of them. You can really see like the waves come in and kind of wipe people out. They tend to live in areas where you'll also find ōpihi. They're like best friends with ōpihi. If you see a hau'ukeuke, you will likely see an ōpihi. If you see an ōpihi, you'll likely see a hau'ukeuke. But I did say they are urchins. What is missing from them? Spines, yeah. So they are well adapted to live in this heavy wave-swept ecosystem. They have adapted to have these shingle-like spines, hence their English name, shingle urchins. Imagine if you have spines and you're living in this wave-heavy area. Your spines would be gone. You would be fish food. So they have this armor-like shingles instead of spines. And you can also see here, they have like these skirt spines on the side of them that help them lay flat against these rocks, just like ōpihi. They have very similar strategies to ōpihi. They also have really thick tube feet that helps them suction onto these rocks. But I don't know, how much time do we have? As much as I want. Okay. I didn't know how much time I had, so I didn't throw too much information into here, but I do have like a lot of graphs. So I'm sorry if it's data heavy. This first one should be kind of easy to see. I just studied the sizes of them on different shores to see if like the heavier wave-swept areas, those urchins were different from the like little tamer sides. So I did north and south shores. I don't have Oahu on here because I lost data from Oahu North Shore. So I just have Hawaii, Maui, and Kauai. And as you can see, where the blue is the North Shore, I forgot I don't have a laser, and then the red is South Shore, they are significantly different in sizes. This side is the length and that is the width. They're kind of like this oblong shape. So I took both length and width. But the North Shore are significantly bigger than the South Shore. Can anybody think of why that might be? Or hypothesize? We don't really know why.
More resilient.
Yeah, because the waves are bigger on the North Shore, right? So they might have more food that come in with those bigger swells on the North Shore. And they might just be getting way bigger, way fatter, because there's just more food there. But I don't know. So I have an undergrad currently working on this.
What eats them?
What eats them?
Yeah.
Just us.
No, nothing. Do they have no natural predators?
No, I mean, if they flip upside down, fish will eat them. But no, just us. Yeah. And not too many of us eat them, so go eat them. And this looks really complicated. I know, it's just a genetic network. Or haplotype frequency. So to make it simple, all the colors are the genes of the populations I found on each island. And if you see all the colors in a circle, that means that they're super related to each other. So they're all kind of in all of these circles, which means our populations in the main Hawaiian Islands are very closely related to each other, which is great news, because if any population ever gets wiped out, you can like reseed them from another population. But is it gone? Something super cool is that this is our population here on the top. These are populations that are found in the Indo-Pacific of the same species, and these are just other urchins. And this is telling you that there's a 66% difference between our urchins and the rest of the urchins in the Indo-Pacific, which is kind of leading to the fact that we might have an endemic species, which is important because if those get wiped out, then they're gone. Just like any other endemic species. But this is like new stuff, and we need to keep studying this to identify whether or not we have a separate species. It'd be really, really cool to find out if we do. But don't let that stop you from eating hau'ukeuke, especially because I think they're delicious, and we need to rediscover that ono of eating foods like this, and not just like eating just the one. Like everybody loves ōpihi, but we know ōpihi are struggling. So I encourage you to try other foods that are along those shores, like the a'ama, the pipipi, maybe not the kupe'e, the hau'ukeuke. They're doing really well. Pipipi are doing really well. Hau'ukeuke are doing really well. So I encourage you to look up the sizes that are good for harvesting, and go ahead and try some. And maybe step away from ōpihi for a little while. Let them come back, and then eat some hau'ukeuke. I think that's all I have. Yeah, that's all I have. Do we have any questions? Yeah.
I got a question.
Uh-huh.
I've never had helmet urchin. How do you eat it?
Oh, you just crack them. So, okay, I'm going to tell you my secret to catching them. Don't tell everybody, because everybody's so scared to catch them, and that's why nobody eats them. But, okay, you have to kind of surprise them, just like ōpihi. I use the base of my hand and then just knock them. You don't have to go super aggressive, but if you surprise them, they'll just slip right off. If you touch them and they won't come off, just wait till a wave crashes. And when the wave is crashing, for some reason, right as it's receding, they release a little, and then you can get them again. But be careful. It is dangerous, yes. So you saw those videos. It is dangerous. They do ōpihi are called the fish of death, right? And hau'ukeuke are their neighbors. So it is dangerous. Go on the smaller shores, like the South Shore, maybe. And just watch the tides. Be nimble. Maybe send your mo'opuna or the ōpiho, as long as they know how to swim. It's safer when you get in a bad situation to jump in the ocean than it is to try to run on the lava fields and get cut up. Yeah. Yeah.
Are those ones that are orange, quite orange inside, or what color is the meat?
Yeah. The uni, it's orange. So like all urchins, they are slightly different in color depending on their age and their sex. So males, and also the size of the uni, like the little eggs. The males will have smaller and more milky, and it's whiter and paler. That's also the same way for the younger ones. They're paler, whereas the females, the egg sizes are slightly bigger. It's more creamy than milky, and it's more orange. Yeah.
For the ōpae that were doing that like masting behavior where they were all out on the highway, did you notice that more so in the north and south ponds as opposed to the mid ponds that had a higher predator prevalence? Or have you...
The highway, I have only seen where there are predators, but that does not mean that they don't do it where there are predators. I just might not have seen it, or where there aren't predators. Usually because they're out during the day and they're eating as much as they want during the day, there's no like rush to jump on a highway whenever, I don't know. I'm assuming it's plankton is coming in during a tidal change, and that's why there's this highway. There's no rush. So I haven't seen it where there's no predators, but they could be doing it. I'm just not seeing it. Yeah. Yes.
On that graph, you said some of them, their ancestors were from freshwater. How did those get developed?
Yeah, so only Aetiidae are freshwater ancestors. Everybody else, so only the Anticaridina and the Halocaridina, which are some of the most abundant ōpae'ula, had freshwater. But so what I think, I don't know this for sure, is that their eggs or their larvae got into the ocean because they can tolerate salt water. The eggs and the larvae can, the adults can't. So I assume that's what happened, is they got into the salt water, they made it here, and they just had to live with it. They had to live in these conditions. And I guess they just had the right adaptations to to figure it out in our brackish waters.
So the eggs can live for a real long time on that
On the,
basically.
I'm not sure how long the eggs can survive without the mother, but the larvae can survive for a while in the water column. Yeah, that's how majority of our shrimp have gotten here. Yeah. Yes.
How long is the life cycle?
They can live up to 20 years. Yeah. So in aquariums, they don't live as long, but I have heard some people have had their aquariums for, I don't know, 15 years. So maybe they can live long. In the wild, they have been seen for maybe about 20 years. Yeah. Yes.
I'm thinking of a pond where we used to see the ōpae, but we haven't for years and years. Are there efforts to reestablish them in ponds where they're now
Yes. Yeah. So
hiding at night for the
yeah, you should go check at night. Do they have predators in their ponds? They have fish in there? Yeah. So I am working with a lot of communities along the northern Kona coast to try to restore their ponds. But it's a lot of monitoring right now just because we're not sure what really is affecting populations other than the predators. But there are efforts. I know Kiholo is working on reestablishing some of their loko ōpae so that the ōpae'ula will naturally come back. I think Kaloko is doing some stuff with their ponds. QLT is doing like a lot of different organizations along the Kona coast are working towards that. As far as other islands, I don't think there's as much of a push. And that is likely because they don't utilize their ōpae'ula the same way that Kona does. Yeah.
How are they introduced species of shrimp affecting the endemic? You know, like the Tahitian migrant?
Oh, that is a great question. The Tahitian prawns are a predator. Yeah. They're also delicious. Eat Tahitian prawns. Yeah, they do. You can see them just sitting where the ōpae'ula comes out of the cracks. They're just sitting there and waiting for the ōpae'ula to come out and they just gobble them up. So they are, if you see them, catch them, eat them. They're good. Yes.
So you had one pond, you had the ones that were doing the normal migration coming out at night, but you had one pond that was doing a reverse migration.
Yes.
And I wonder if you have an explanation for that.
Like they were coming out more during the day, you mean?
Yeah, they were rare at night and out during the day.
Yeah, so I think it's because naturally that's what they would do, but the other ponds all have predators and the predators are resting at night, so they're not actively hunting at night.
But why is that what they naturally do?
The ōpae'ula?
Yeah.
Why would they be out during the day and not at night? Well, I mean, they would come out when they feel like coming out to eat, but during the day, because they're eating on like algae and microbes that might be oxygen rich during the day, that's probably why they come out more often during the day.
So I have a hypothesis.
Yeah.
Because we actually collected data on this.
Oh, okay.
And the one pond where we saw reverse migration was the one where the Tahitian prawns were there and there were no fish.
Oh.
Prawns were sitting there at night as the ōpae came streaming out of the cracks, picking them off.
Really? Oh my God, that's devastating. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's cool, but devastating at the same time. Well, the ponds that I looked at didn't have any sort of predators. So yeah, they were just out in abundance during the day. Yeah, cool.
I have two questions.
Uh-huh.
And one is, I'm working on a hydrological mandala, and one is about the cleaning that they do of the reef. So I wondered how important they are and what other species are also really doing that, how important that is to keep the water clear, because that's really important. And then you didn't define, and I hope you will, osmo regulator and osmo controller, because it seems that osmo is like pressure, but it has to do with salt. So are they more resilient than some of the species that are dependent on the fresh water? Because I know when there's development, there's less fresh water that is available to ecosystems generally and on the coast. And how do they fit into the hydrological cycle?
Great questions. Okay, that's a lot to unpack. So first, what role they play in cleaning the water. So not reefs, they clean the loko ōpaes. And so right now, because there's a lot of nutrient input from cesspools. They are struggling to keep some of these ponds clear, even though they are abundant. Some places that have lots of those cesspools near them have just way too much nutrient input, so the algae is just taking off like crazy. So the ōpae can't help clean those ponds on their own. We are going to need some human intervention to like just pull the algae out to help out the ōpae. But in a natural ecosystem where there isn't nutrient inputs, they would they're the main grazers in these ponds. So they're the ones that are just keeping the ground clear so that fresh and salt water, fresh water and fresh salt water can come in and clear out the ponds, and they're eating up all of the microbes and the algae at the same time. So they are very important when there isn't huge nutrient influxes. They're still very important when there are huge nutrient influxes. It's just we're going to have to help them a little bit. Your other question has to do with osmoregulation, osmoconformers. So Halocaridina rubra specifically have these an abundance of these mitochondrial rich cells, which is giving them an advantage in how the salinity changes throughout the day and throughout all the time. So they can survive in like super salty water. They can survive in super fresh water. And it's likely because they have these adaptations on their gills that can help pull salt water. Yeah, or salt from the water.
Yes, one more. So I have to find one word that's like the parentheses, because anchialine is a word that a lot of people know and a lot of people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So this is for the Kona Airport mural on the water wall. And so I put brackish, but when I was listening to you, it seemed like that they're not fed from any other source except groundwater and submarine flows.
Yes.
Is there a better, a very brief way to say what an anchialine pond or pond ecosystem is?
Brief? Probably not. I think brackish is a good brief term. But if you can fit in groundwater in there, it might be it might show how special these ecosystems are. Groundwater fed, yes, yeah. Otherwise, if they're getting surface waters, then they're just a lake or they're just a tide pool. That's what differentiates them. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes.
Is anybody doing anything to try to control the predators exclusive of the Tahitian shrimp?
They are, yeah. There are some folks that are trying to do CO2 removal. So they pump CO2 into these ponds. And the ōpae'ula retreat underground. So the ōpae'ula are safe, whereas the fish are too big to retreat underground. So, and then they scoop them out, they fish them out. There are just fishing efforts to get them out, but there are a bunch of different organizations that are working on trying to control those fish populations. Yeah. Yeah.
How far down do these ōpae travel? Do you have any idea?
However far down the lava tubes go, so a little bit of hydrology bonus here. We have a water tip, a freshwater lens, right? So some places along our coastline, our freshwater lens is way thicker than other places. It's a lot thinner. So depending on how thick or thin the freshwater lens is will tell you how salty a pond will be. So places like Kiholo, they have a really thick freshwater lens. So their ponds are really, really fresh. They're like 0 to 3 parts per thousand. No matter where on that coast, no matter if you're steps away from the ocean, that's how fresh it is. Whereas other places closer to the airport, their ponds are like 20, 25 parts per thousand. So their lens is probably way thinner. So that lava tube or the ōpae that needs to get like a buried ōpae that needs to get to that saltier water may only have to travel like a couple of meters down, whereas the ones in Kiholo are probably traveling tens of maybe 50 meters down. They might be traveling super, super far down to get to that saltier water. Yeah.
You cannot radio color.
You cannot radio color. I have tried to figure out how to tag these little shrimp, but I should have said they're only about the size of your fingernail. They're really small. So I don't know if anybody can figure out how to tag like maybe a microchip. Let me know. I'm down.
Dye with food coloring.
I thought of that, but they shed so often. Well, molt, I should say. It depends on salinity and if they're growing a lot. And so the ones I have in my personal tank, they molt like every 2 weeks. So I have to be really on it to know if I dye them, to know where they're going, what's happening. And like I can't see them underground anyway, so I wouldn't know where they're going. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Is there a reason you're not seeing this, like observing as much like predators in those middle ponds, whereas you're seeing them a lot?
I think there's a great reason. Yeah, thank you for asking that. So the ponds that have predators are lower elevation and they're in a lava field that is mostly made up of a'a and is like dated older. Oh, let me get this right. It's dated older than the ponds that don't have predators in it. The ponds that don't have predators are in Pohuehue. And there's a flow that came slightly after. So it's a little bit younger. So I think it cut off the water connection between north and south. And that's why they became middle. And they're also in a higher elevation. Their water is fresher. So I think it's just very different, and it's also in a hard to get to place. So as far as human influence and humans dumping their fish there, that hasn't happened yet. Whereas the other ones are easy to access and humans can just dump their fish there. But also the fish can travel a lot in those areas because they're during the higher tides, those ponds kind of all connect to each other. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, one more. Yeah.
Do you anticipate if there's warming, of the environment, that's going to have a great effect? Or
there is a scientist right now that is looking at their ability to adapt to higher temperatures, and they're actually looking at the ponds that recently opened back up in Kapoho. Because those ponds are really, really hot for a long time and there was ōpae'ula in them. So they're like, how are the ōpae'ula surviving in these super hot conditions when they love this fresher water, cold conditions? So I don't know anything yet, but there is another scientist working on that right now. Yeah.
So I do have one more. Is your funding being affected with the government funding side?
I have been fortunate enough to have private funders. Lots of people love ōpae'ula. So personally, no. But when I'm doing big, expensive things like genetics, then yes, because I usually get my funding from the National Science Foundation, and that's all gone now. So the genetics is on hold for now, but that's why I'm staring at fish and doing behavior, or staring at shrimp and doing behaviors, because that's cheap work. So yeah, cheap money-wise, cheap time-wise, no. Okay.
so much belief.
Yeah, thank you.